So let's start with a feeling. A feeling I bet you might recognize. You're doing your best, you're following the rules, you're trying to be fair and decent, but somehow it feels like you're being punished for it. Like your own integrity is being used against you.
Well, what if I told you that's not just a feeling? That you're not just imagining things?
According to the analysis we're exploring today, it's actually the logical outcome of a hidden social dynamic. It's like a game being played all around us, and to get what's happening, you first have to understand the players.
All right, let's dive in. This model suggests that our social world is really shaped by the interactions between three, let's call them archetypes or player types.
First up, we have the principled moral actors. Think of these as the bedrock. They operate on fairness, they cooperate, they trust. They're basically the moral capital of a society. But here's the catch. Their greatest strength, their consistency and honesty, also makes them predictable, and that's a vulnerability.
Then you have the complete opposite, Group 2, the dominance-oriented benefit seekers. These guys are all about raw, unapologetic power. They get what they want through force, through intimidation. Whatever works. There's no subtlety here. You know exactly where you stand with them because their hostility is right out in the open. Think of this as the psychological dark triad: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy in action.
And that brings us to our third and maybe the most interesting player. Group 3, the calculating opportunists. Now these are the most dangerous because on the surface they look and sound just like Group 1. They talk a big game about fairness, they criticize the bullies in Group 2, but behind the scenes they're quietly bending and breaking the rules for their own benefit. They've mastered the art of justifying it to themselves. They're the wolves in sheep's clothing who have completely convinced themselves that they are in fact sheep.
So here's a quick breakdown of how they stack up. You can see the motives are completely different. Fairness versus dominance versus pure self-interest. The moralists see potential partners. The exploiters see tools to be used. And the calculators, well, they see naive resources ready to be tapped. And their tactics tell the whole story. Honesty, brute force, and that really corrosive third option, covert manipulation.
So how does this whole game play out? Well, the calculators are smart. They're not going to pick a fight with the powerful exploiters. They know they'd get crushed. So they go after easier targets, the trusting, predictable moralists from Group 1.
This leads us to two totally different kinds of exploitation. Look, the open aggression from Group 2 is awful, no doubt, but you can see it coming, you know who the enemy is, it can even bring principled people together to fight back. But the covert exploitation from Group 3, that's a whole different poison. It doesn't just attack you, it attacks the very idea of trust itself. It's a betrayal that rots the system from the inside out, making you wonder if there were ever any real rules to begin with.
And that's the absolute heart of it right there. The deepest, most lasting damage doesn't come from your declared enemy. You expect that. No, it comes from the supposed friend, the person who claims to share your values and then stabs you in the back the second it's convenient for them.
This is what leads to something the analysis calls a moral injury. It's a devastating psychological process. It starts with that betrayal from a supposed ally. Then comes the horrible realization: your fairness isn't seen as a strength, it's seen as a weakness to be exploited. And from there, it's a straight line to total disillusionment, a complete loss of faith in the system, in the rules, in everything. And this is where the moral actor does something that seems totally irrational. They might actually side with the open tyrant, with Group 2. But it's not because they've turned evil, it's an act of pure desperation. They've concluded that the game is so broken, so corrupt, that the raw language of power is the only thing anyone understands anymore. It's a desperate attempt to punish the hypocrites by just flipping the entire game board over.
Okay, I know this might all sound a bit abstract, so let's walk through a concrete example from the source material to see how this works in practice. We're going to use a neutral, analytical scenario, a rule-following migrant trying to navigate a rigid administrative system.
So our Group 1 protagonist is this migrant. They do everything by the book, learn the language, pay taxes, work hard, and trust the process. Then they encounter Group 2 behavior, the system itself, a bureaucratic wall that uses arbitrary power, endless delays, and total silence. And finally, you get Group 3, which is the complicit society around them, the banks, the employers, the landlords, all saying, "Sorry, our hands are tied, we're just following the rules," while actively enforcing the system's cruelty.
So after years of playing by the rules, being crushed by the system's power, and abandoned by the opportunists, the final message this person receives is just chillingly clear. Your honesty, your contributions, your fairness, they mean absolutely nothing here.
And look, you can see echoes of this dynamic everywhere.
not just in this one scenario. Think about dedicated healthcare workers or teachers who are praised for their ideals but are completely burned out by rigid systems that reward corner-cutting over genuine care. This model really forces us to take a step back and ask some huge questions, not just about people, but about the systems we all live and work in.
Because when these dynamics take hold on a larger scale, the costs to society are immense. You see moral trust just plummet. Subtle manipulation and gaming the system become the new normal. Good, principled people just check out entirely. And all of this creates a power vacuum that, as the model predicts, gets filled by raw authoritarian power. Which leaves us all with a really tough, personal question. How do you stay principled? How do you stay effective in a system that seems to actively reward dishonesty? How do you keep from getting cynical or, worse, becoming a player yourself in the very game you hate? You know, the analysis suggests the first step isn't some magic solution, but just recognizing that this dynamic is often systemic. It's not a personal failure, it's the game itself.
And that leads to the big strategic puzzle. How do you get through to the calculators in Group 3? How do you make them see the deep paradox in their actions, that by chasing their short-term wins and undermining the moral actors, they are literally paving the road for the very tyrants they claim to fear? Their clever moves don't just hurt the good guys, they empower the brutal ones. So, with all that on the table, we'd love to hear from you. In your own life, in your workplace or social role, whether you're a teacher, an engineer, a student, a nurse, whatever you do, have you ever felt caught in this kind of trap? Stuck between trying to do the right thing, a rigid system, and all these subtle social pressures?
And especially if you've ever had to navigate one of those complex, frustrating administrative systems yourself, what helped you stay resilient? What strategies did you use to get through long waits, uncertainty, or just a total lack of communication? Your insights could really help someone else. Please feel free to share your story in the comments. Seriously, your insights, the good and the bad, can help all of us understand these dynamics a little better. Because the goal here isn't to point fingers at any person or institution. It's to understand how the game is played. Because that's the first step toward, maybe one day, changing the rules.